the goal. Making something out of nothing.
Malcheski, is that the grand final?
Jimmy Bartell can make a hero of himself.
That is a brilliant snap.
He's kicked the goal and Freeman to win it after the siren. What a game of football at the MCG.
Welcome to our final episode of the Protected Zone for 2017, and there's only one thing that we really need to discuss: the 2017 AFL Grand Final between Adelaide and Richmond, the winners and the losers. This time around it really is Tiger time. I'm Eddie J in the Sydney studio.
And I'm Linton Nanam from Padang in West Sumatra. Yes, Tiger is of course called Harimau in West Sumatra. And Sumatran Tiger is very happy about the Grand Final day.
Now, would all of Indonesia be happy about this, or just West Sumatra?
Yes, people in West Sumatra like their tigers, Sumatran tigers, famed tigers. But in general, Indonesia is a merah putih country of red and white. So they would have liked to see the team from Sydney doing better. And hopefully they might be doing better next year.
Well, let's see if they do better next year. But it's been another lousy week for tipping for us. We couldn't even get the grand final right. All we had to do was choose one and we couldn't get it right. So we both tipped Adelaide to win, but they were found wanting.
Yes, during the finals month, September, I think we got, or I got one and you got zilch. And this is just no good. I think next season we have to improve. But Eddie, why do you think we went so badly?
Well, I think we were trying to compensate for the unusual up and down season that we had during the home and away series, where anything was happening and everything was happening. We ended up getting so many unusual decisions being made, so many unusual games, upsets. Upsets were happening virtually every week, but I think during the final series things just got back to their natural order and it didn't work out for us.
I think we were still in 2017 home and away season mode and couldn't adjust to this final season, regular, normal. In other words, the games of the finals were a bit boring, weren't they?
They were very boring, and in fact the average result in the final series, and there's 9 games in the finals including the grand final, the average margin was 48 points. How boring is that?
Yes, not a very good footy. I mean, teams competing in the final series, fans of those teams were, naturally happy about it, and the Tigers fans are ecstatic, of course. But as a, pure spectator, it was a bit boring, wasn't it? Yes,
it certainly was. And so I think we ended up getting one very, very close match that was drawn at the final siren, and then it was a goal after the siren to win the match. That was between West Coast and Port Adelaide, but the rest of the games were, quite frankly, they weren't up to scratch. And the next margin up from there was 36 points. That was between Adelaide and Greater Western Sydney. And then, just all fell apart. So, there weren't very many close matches and there weren't very many good matches. But as we discussed, or as we mentioned at the beginning of the program, we said that we'd look at the grand final. So how did the grand final start for you?
Well, I was paying great interest in the national anthem performance. We talked about the national anthem. Why do we play national anthem only once? I think we should play twice because one team from Adelaide, one team from Melbourne, both representing Australia, so they should play Australian national anthem twice.
I think they should. And who performed the national anthem this time around?
I think it's AFL's favourite singer this year anyway, Dami Im. She also performed at the Brownlow Medal Award function earlier in the week, and she turned up and played the national anthem.
Well, maybe that's part of the gig, that if you could do the singing at the grand final, you also get to do it at Brownlow night. So maybe that was part of the contract. But she seemed to do a pretty good performance, so I don't think... I think the national anthem was performed quite well. But there was much made about the Adelaide stance during the national anthem. What happened there?
Yes, during the national anthem was sung by Dami Im. The Tigers players linked sort of shoulder by shoulder, sort of linking as a team, sort of one team, while Adelaide players stood sort of in the stance called a stare down. They were sort of glaring at the opposition players, and they were not linking arms, and they were just staring down, and they didn't move until the opposition team sort of broke off. It was just a sort of scare tactics, I think.
Well, to me it did seem like it was a big scare tactic, but I suspect that Adelaide, because they performed so poorly throughout the match, I think what they actually did do was that they put all of their psychological effort into the stare down of the Richmond team, and when it came to playing the game, they were all psyched out themselves. So it was almost like a bit of reverse psychology that had been thrown back onto the Adelaide team.
Well, it was to sort of, showing off their resolve. They look stern, and they look scary. In fact, some players looked so handsome and beautiful, and I thought, wow, Adelaide players, whoa, they could perform well. They didn't look out of place. I think their tactics worked as when the game started. They kicked 2 first goals, didn't they?
Yes, in the first quarter, Adelaide did get the game underway quite quickly, and they did score the first 2 goals. You're absolutely right there. Richmond looked a little bit lost, but just getting back to that national anthem stare, while I was looking at both teams, I noticed that Richmond had 3 beards in their team, 3 really long beards, and I thought, that's the team that will win, the team that's got the longest beards, and I was right. But Adelaide, yes, you're right, they did score the first 2 goals. Rory Sloane and Eddie Betts for Adelaide scored those 2 goals, but then it was Bakar Hooley that ended up getting the show back on the road.
Yes, he's the one with the great beard. I admire him, and he played really well throughout the game, not just in the first quarter. And he was, not many people talk about. But I think he was close to man of the match, and his teammate in defence, Richmond, was the key factor bringing their grand final win.
Yes, well, the game was on the line in that first quarter, and Bakar Hooley, or Basher Hooley, he put his neck on the line. He was there taking the grabs, pushing the ball forward, and Jack Riewoldt, he actually scored 3 behinds in a row, and Richmond really needed to put on the scoreboard pressure, but something was lacking. But then Basher Hooley, he steps in and saves the day for Richmond. So Richmond then hit the front by another Hooley goal, and then Adelaide scored another 2 goals very, very quickly to lead by 11 points at the end of the first quarter. And I thought, well, that's Adelaide putting their foot down, and they'll run away with the rest of the match. But I was wrong.
Yes, I thought when Jack Riewoldt missed 3, gettable goals, I thought, yes. Even though he's, one of the marks in that quarter was pretty spectacular, but he couldn't convert it. And his misses, I thought, whoa, Richmond, it may be costly.
Well, let's listen to some of those behinds that he scored.
Launch at the footy. Doesn't matter whether you mark it, bring it to ground. That's a terrific mark.
What a mark from Riewoldt. A grand final mark. Now duck. This is where he's got to do his work.
Well, we spoke about the breeze. Very blustery down there. He has to kick it straight at the goals, BT. Don't allow for the breeze.
Straight at the middle. Huge opportunity needed to be capitalised here, and he's just missed it to the left. He was looking for the breeze, exactly as you said. We stood in that spot before the game, Doug.
Yeah, we did.
And
Talia right, though, staying on the move.
You don't want half-time to come, and Richmond have had lots of misses, and that be the reason they're not in the game. They've got to start scoring, and here's an opportunity for Riewoldt, his second. Perhaps a little bit of left to right late on it, and once again a behind.
Got across, Revolt did well. Vlosten back to Revolt. Maybe this time. Yes! No, again. 3 shots on goal within about 3 minutes. All of them different. And the Tigers trail by 9 points. But Adelaide finding it a little hard to get it out of the back 50 right now.
And some of the commentators were actually saying, well, that's 3 behinds in a row. Bad kicking is bad football. Have they let Adelaide off the hook?
Yes, I think so. And, that's what I thought, as you said. Oh, yes, Adelaide were, on target, while Richmond, they were applying good pressure and the, defence were holding firm, so to speak. If you look at the goal kickers for Adelaide, none of the usual suspects. Much touted forward line, Tex Walker, Josh Jenkins, and all that sort of players weren't playing very well. They were scoring, but not through their usual forward players.
Oh, you're absolutely right there. And the cliche is that it's the third quarter that is the premiership quarter, but it seems like Richmond actually played 2 premiership quarters. The second quarter and the third quarter were their premiership quarters. So in the second quarter, that's when they really started putting on their pressure. Adelaide didn't score a goal and Richmond added 4 of their own.
Yes, during the September, it became obvious Richmond's game plan. They would hold the opposition down with a strong pressure. As long as they break even, that's fine. After 3 quarters or after 2 quarters, after half a game, then they'll start seeking to score. That seems to have been the pattern. But in this grand final, they put their foot down much quicker. And during the second quarter, they were applying the good forward press, but at the same time started scoring goals.
And as you mentioned before, the famous Adelaide forward line, it just failed to function. So Taylor Walker, Josh Jenkins, Eddie Betts, Tom Lynch, they all went missing. Do you think it was purely because of Richmond's pressure, or was there something else?
I think all the credits have to go to, the Richmond defenders. Rance was probably close to best on the ground, even though defenders don't win those medals and, don't get awards. But I think he was superb. And Eddie Betts, even though he kicked early goal, but he was held by Dylan Grimes most of the match. And Charlie Cameron did his cameo. But all in all, yes, Adelaide offensive weapons didn't fire very well. I don't know why, but it's all relative, isn't it? And throughout the year, it was Adelaide scoring more than 100 points to win the games, and their firepower just didn't fire.
No, it did not. And you can end up on top of the ladder. You can have the greatest goal-scoring machine in history. You can win as many games as possible during the home and away season. But that doesn't count for anything. It's the final game in September that really matters, the grand final.
Yes, indeed. Probably you could say that, consistently throughout the year, Adelaide probably, you could say, was the best team. Consistently, and but as you said, Eddie, what matters most is on the final Saturday of September, and on that day, Richmond was simply better.
Half-time, Richmond was leading Adelaide by 9 points, and I thought, well, they've played a very, very good second quarter. They've brought their pressure to the game. Adelaide didn't play so well, but they're only 9 points behind. You can seek redemption in a grand final if you're only 9 points behind. But the third quarter, Richmond played yet another premiership quarter. It was 5 goals to Richmond. Adelaide only scored 1 goal. They didn't seek the redemption that they were after.
Exactly. I think the coach for Adelaide, Don Pike, probably didn't give it too much talk, and the players didn't seem to have freshened up, or okay, we'll take a redemption, but they were rolled over again in the third quarter, as if there was no halftime, there was no talk by the coach, more of the same. As you said, the second and third quarter, that were the quarters Richmond won the game.
Oh, they certainly did. And in our grand final preview last week, we did, admittedly, we did say that Adelaide was going to win this game, but we did point to their record at the MCG, which was not actually that good this year. They'd only played 3 games there. They were undefeated, but they only played 3 games there. They had wins against Carlton and Hawthorn and a draw against Collingwood. So maybe we should have listened to what people were saying about their MCG form, that it was not that good.
Yes, there's we've been talking about the finals, how finals should be played. Part of finals or even grand final is that it has to be played at MCG, and some interstate teams in particular, they have a very little chance to play there. And, on grand final day, we had a terrific number of people turning up, more than 100,000 people. But most of them are Tiger fans. And it's like, even though Adelaide was supposed to be host, but, they surely have felt like they're playing away game.
Yeah, so that contract with the MCG, that expires in the year 2035. So there's still 17 more seasons to go before the AFL can even think about changing the venue of the grand final. But there's probably a little bit of an unfair advantage for interstate teams. But still, it doesn't really matter where you play. You've got goalposts at either end of the ground. If it's the MCG or Adelaide Oval or the new Perth Stadium or the Sydney Cricket Ground or Brisbane Cricket Ground, it doesn't really matter. It's always going to be the best team that wins the grand final.
Yes, but you've got to take into account, what sort of people turn up on the ground, even though the grounds look very much the same. But the crowd noise, and of course umpires are affected by the crowd cheering for one decision or the other, while, players are not used to a certain sort of atmosphere. So those little things affect, and if Adelaide were playing at home at Adelaide Oval, the result could have been different.
Yes, it could have been different. But going into the final quarter, Richmond was leading Adelaide by 34 points, and never in history has a team come back from that sort of deficit. So it looked like Richmond was going to win this game at three-quarter time, and they certainly snuffed out the game. In the first 5 minutes of the final quarter, they scored another 2 goals, and they were leading by 46 points 5 minutes into the final quarter, which meant that they had scored 11 out of the previous 12 goals. So that's pretty good form. If you're wanting to be the premiership team, that's the sort of thing that you need to do. And so, it was all over 5 minutes into the final quarter. I think the Tiger Army was starting to sing the song, and they realised that their premiership drought of 37 years was almost over.
Yes, the celebration started early, and that's a typical of a grand final game. The result, was clear by that stage, and, players were just playing in motion. Adelaide players, I think, the game was over, and Richmond players were in celebration mode. Yes, as a spectacle, and if you're not a Tiger fan, yes, sort of last 20 minutes was just, I don't know, not really a game of footy, but waiting for the celebration, final moment, final time to come.
Oh, yes, and as you mentioned, the final 20 minutes of the game, that would have been ecstasy for Richmond fans. For Adelaide fans, it would have been absolute torture. But for neutral fans, it would have been, so what? Like, when's the good game going to start here? But ultimately, Richmond won the game by 48 points. It was an emphatic victory. There's no question about that. My feeling is that it doesn't matter where the game would have been played, they still probably would have won. It was just going to be their year. But unfortunately, afterwards, some people started to have a go at Richmond. And the former St Kilda coach, Grant Thomas, he was saying that Richmond are the worst team ever to win the flag. Is this fair?
Yes, it's a funny comment to come out from Grant Thomas, but he didn't coach St Kilda for a long time. So, you got to take that into account. Yeah, I mean, we kept saying that, Richmond are they real deal, all throughout the year. Fair enough, they finished number 13 last year, and they're coming from that position to win the grand final following year. Yes, everyone has to question, are they really good? And we are, asking the questions throughout the year too. But they are a really good team. They've got their spines, key position players. And Dustin Martin, he's one of a kind. He's just brilliant. He had a greatest year of himself. And he played just about, the best he could do. And alongside Dustin Martin, Rance and Cochin and Revold, they had injury-free year, and that helped. And of course, the Damien Hardwick's sort of tactics or game plan sort of worked well. Press, and small forward. Sort of unusual for the opposition team to counter. And it worked. While Adelaide, they would have conquered anyone else, but on this day, they didn't deliver ball cleanly into their forward line. Forward couldn't do very much when the ball came down. The Tiger defenders were there all the time taking intercept marks. So... it's the coach played a big role in the grand final win too.
Oh, most definitely. And I do find it hilarious that there's still people saying, are Richmond the real deal? And that's effectively what Grant Thomas is saying when he says that Richmond are the worst team ever to win the flag. But you just wonder, what else do they need to do to convince people? And even with the bookmakers for premiers in 2018, Richmond are ranked 4th after Adelaide, who just lost the grand final, Sydney, who weren't anywhere near the grand final, and Greater Western Sydney, who also missed out. So it seems like Richmond still need to convince a lot more people before they'll even be considered to be the real deal. But the thing is that they've got their name on the Premiership Cup. They've got Richmond engraved on the Premiership Cup, and they're the premiers for 2017.
Exactly. They don't need to impress anyone. They certainly don't need to impress people like Grant Thomas. They've got Premiership Cup.
So you're listening to The Protected Zone. You can subscribe to us on iTunes. You can listen to us on YouTube or SoundCloud. And you can find us on Tumblr now. So look out for us, and you can listen to us anywhere. Up next, we feature the Song of the Week. So, the Song of the Week, what should we consider this time around? Like, should we consider the song for the best team or for the best player or a combination of the two? Like, I was scratching my head a little bit trying to think of the song that we could use for the Song of the Week.
Well, to sum up the year, brilliant, play by, and a brilliant week for him, Dustin Martin. He won the Brownlow Medal, he won the Premiership, and then he won the Norm Smith. Wow, trifecta. Has anyone ever done that?
No, they have never done that before. And a lot of people, including the highly respected Lee Matthews, who's widely considered to be one of the best players ever, he said that Dusty Martin has possibly had the best season ever of any player in the history of the game, and that's over 121 seasons. So that's saying something.
I'm just curious, has he got any part of his body left to etch this premiership? I mean, that's what AFL players do, don't they? They etch their sort of premiership win on their body, tattoo. But Dusty already has got so much space covered. I don't know. He can find any space for the 2017 Tigers Grand Final or something.
No, he's got no space left on his body, and he also won the Richmond Fairest and Best Award as well. So he had to scrape in a little bit of room I think it was on the back of his shoulder to write in the Fairest and Best for the 2017 Richmond team.
What about forehead?
Well, he's got a little bit of space there, but that might seem a little bit strange having the name of your award tattooed onto your forehead. But yeah, I'm not too sure about that. Like, it just means that he hasn't got that much room for 2018 and beyond. So if he wins awards next year and beyond, he just hasn't got any room on his body.
Yes, he might have to erase some of the, skulls and crossbones and, those meaningless ones.
Yes, but yes, he certainly had a very, very, very good season. And Lin Tang and I have suggested that we should play a Dusty Springfield song in recognition of Dusty Martin's fantastic season.
Oh, yes. Let's listen to A Son of a Preacher. Isn't he a son of a preacher?
Yes, that's a very good song. So we'll play that in a minute. So this is our final episode of the year, but during the off-season we'll be playing Short Quarters, which is going to be a series of our best segments from the 2017 season. So there'll be lots of things to listen to during the off-season and during the summer. And we've also got a book of the 2017 season coming out.
And we're coming back for 2018.
Oh, we definitely are. You can have a little bit of a rest over the off-season, but we're all about AFL. Like, what else is there in life apart from AFL?
Oh, you've got to make an off-season trip to Bali or something, don't you?
We'll go somewhere. I'm not sure what yet, but we missed out on the Mad Monday yesterday, so we'll do a Mad Monday at some point. But yes, we'll be back in 2018 and we'll be coming out with our new book as soon as possible, so keep a lookout for it. Thanks for listening in over this long 2017 season, and we're going out with Dusty Springfield and The Son of a Preacher.
Yes, thanks for listening, and see you next year.
Billy Ray was a preacher's son, and when his daddy would visit, he'd come along. When they gathered around and started talking, Cousin Billy would take me walking. Out through the backyard we go walking. Then he looked into my eyes. Lord knows to my surprise, the only one who could ever teach me was the son of a preacher man. The only boy who could ever teach me was the son of a preacher man. You see, he was. Being good isn't always easy, no matter how hard I try. When he started sweet talking to me, he come and tell me everything is alright. He kiss and tell me everything's alright. Can I get away again tonight? The only one who could ever reach me was the son of a preacher man. The only boy who could ever reach me was the son of a preacher man. Yes, he was. He was. Yes, he was. How will I remember the look in his eyes? Stealing kisses from me outside.
He's the first. It's just a celebration of all good things Richmond right now. That famous moment, we saw it when Collingwood broke the drought, when Lee came down, and now Dimmer.
The Tigers are going to win the premiership.